Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, it's an all-Pundits show, and we're talking about redistricting with Alex Goff, Helen Foley, and Jesse Wadhams. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers. I'm here at the Carson Valley Inn in Minden with Joey Whitaker. You have a great hotel here. Mike Pegerman's invested a ton of money into this place to make it just gorgeous. Tell people what they can expect when they come down and stay.
A real quality experience, Sam, and the rooms, you've stayed in them, they're good size, very well appointed, clean, and for about $65 Sunday through Thursday right now through the winter. After you're done with your meetings, you take a nice, beautiful scenic drive and come stay in a very nice, beautiful room. It's not a long way to get away to the Carson Valley Inn.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad on No Holds Barred Political Forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we are taping this on the morning of November 10th. It is Wednesday, and as of this Friday, there will be a special session, we understand, of the legislature, and we have an all-pundit show, so a great group to talk about this. Helen Foley is here. She's president of Foley Public Affairs. Alex Goff is here, the Democratic National Committeeman, and Jesse Wadhams, partner with Black and Wadhams Attorneys at Law. Helen, let's start with you. Your thoughts on this upcoming special session and what it's going to accomplish.
Well, it's going to accomplish what is mandated every 10 years, and that is after the census, then they redistrict and reapportion the legislature. All of the seats, whether they are from the Board of Regents, County Commission, or the legislature, have to be equal in size. Because during a 10-year period of time, those districts that are landlocked stay the same size, and the others that are in the outskirts of town grow exponentially. One of the issues we have is many of the counties in Nevada have not grown at all, and some, like Lincoln County, has actually decreased in size. So there will be much larger rural districts and smaller districts in the center of the suburbs and cities in our state.
All right, so Jesse, on what we've seen floated out so far, what are the areas that people might be concerned about? Beyond just, as Helen brought up, the size of these rural districts, which are insane to begin with. I mean, if you're going to get elected to be a senator in rural Nevada, you better have a lot of availability on your engine for mileage.
The gas prices being what they are, you're going to be spending a lot of money driving around the state in a rural district. Obviously, what folks look at in any redistricting is how competitive the seats are going to be, but you also have various communities that need to be preserved. Try to preserve city boundaries, try to preserve neighborhoods, and try to keep certain structures and the soft boundaries, I guess, sort of intact. And I think it'll be interesting to see how these maps, the maps that we've seen, get discussed, because you are seeing, particularly with our legislature being as tiny as it is, and what is a really robust growth in southern Nevada particularly, but also here in northern Nevada, that we are compacting more districts into the urban areas and just pulling more and more of the rural districts into those in the urban areas. So it's going to create a weird, I think, dichotomy of representation, just how we sort of balance the rural and urban populations in the state going forward for the next 10 years.
Well, Alex, you know, for many sessions now, I've spoken to very lonely county commissioners and city council folk from places like Elko County and Humboldt County who are desperate for recognition because so many people in southern Nevada really don't even know where these places are.
Well, first I have to say happy birthday to the Marine Corps, and I believe this airs on Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day. But as you may know, the mayor of West Wendover is a friend of mine, Daniel Corono, who we've had on the show a few times. And I remember he said the first legislative session he went to Carson City, he actually had to show people on a map where his city was located. And so, yeah, so if you're in a rural city, in a rural county, and you have a representative who represents a lot of rural area, you may even have to explain maybe to your own legislator where you live, right? Much less to someone who lives in Clark or Washoe County. And so that's the interesting thing as the rurals begin, as Helen said, some of them depopulate, but certainly aren't keeping up with the population growth in Clark and Washoe County. How do we ensure that rural issues still get brought to the floor? And so it's important for people in rural communities and people live in the cities to continue to develop and build those relationships so that we can really represent all of Nevada.
You know, Helen, one of the reasons I started Nevada Newsmakers in the first place was I was concerned that with the population shift to southern Nevada, that many people in southern Nevada would not know where Washoe County was, where Reno-Sparks was, and would basically give it the same shrift as it would to Elko and Winnemucca. And no insult to those areas, but their population base is far less than the Reno-Sparks area and the entire metro district, which is around 500,000 people. Do you have concerns, because I know you represent people all across the state, that Washoe and the surrounding counties are going to be losing more influence as time goes by?
Oh, I hope so. Yes, I do.
You hope so?
No, let me just say that we became a state in 1864, and until the 1970s, Washoe County was the big dog. You know, up at the legislature, Clark County had very little representation. And then in the 70s, all of a sudden, we grew dramatically. And now we have a community where most people in Southern Nevada go either to Zion in Utah or they go down to Southern California, and they rarely go north for anything. They really don't know much about Reno, they don't know much about Elko, and they're missing out on an awful lot. But because reapportionment is done based on population, there's no other choice except to lose influence. Now, right now, we have 21 in the Senate and 42 in the Assembly. We are allowed by the Constitution to go up to 75 members of the legislature. I happened to serve in the 1981 session when we had reapportionment, and we increased by 1 senator and 2 assembly members that session. If you'll look at the Senate chambers and the Assembly chambers, there are some extra seats in there. The legislature could expand a bit so that rural areas wouldn't be as large, or maybe Washoe County could get more representation. But that doesn't seem to be have an appetite this time during the session. But we could get up all the way to 75%. And if that happened, there would be more representation.
You know, Jesse, it's interesting because if you go back in history in the state of Nevada, at one point in Lander County, Eureka was the big dog. And I'm sorry, Austin was the big dog, not Eureka. And they mistreated Battle Mountain, something ferocious. Then Battle Mountain ended up being the big dog, and then Austin got treated badly. So it's not just the big cities that can suffer from this. But do you know, is there a need for Washoe County and the surrounding counties to combine and do a marketing campaign to Southern Nevada to say, hey, we're not just 50 people sitting out here in the middle of a desert, but there's 500,000 people in this metro area.
Well, I think certainly Northern Nevada marketing itself to Southern Nevada is probably a good idea in any event. I think obviously Southern Nevadans and Northern Nevadans likewise, we should be sharing the state, and the benefits of Northern Nevada to Southern Nevadans are myriad, and just as they are to going to Southern Nevada as well for us. So, but I think really what we have seen is we've seen an amount of growth in the Reno-Sparks area. I think we all live it every day. And I think certainly it appears in the maps that we've seen to have, there was a lot of conventional wisdom that we would lose probably a northern Senate seat or a assembly district to Southern Nevada, and that appears not to have happened. We've held our own on sort of what representation we will have. Obviously, rural Nevada, as Helen mentions, either has held steady or is losing, so that's where those moves are going to come. So I think what we'll see is Washoe's kind of holding its own where it kind of sits, and generally speaking, I think Washoe has done a good job of being a united delegation, even amongst its partisan members, where a Ben Kekeffer will work with a Julia Ratty to really get the regional issues right. So fortunately, I think we have good representation over the years that has forestalled the inevitable loss of influence.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the news just broke that Don Tatro is going to go to the legislature to replace Ben Kekeffer, but is not planning to run again. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I anticipated, the county commission has to be careful in those situations not to endorse someone who's going to run in the general election. They want to let the voters decide that. And so Don and I believe the other gentleman, Robert, had made it clear that they didn't want to run. Assemblywoman Krasner had made it clear she did want to run. And so I had assumed that she was going to be eliminated from the contest. And so, he'll be there to offer one vote and serve his community. And so, it's good that, he had the availability to be able to do that, because obviously the people who were running weren't in consideration. But you had spoken earlier about marketing for Northern Nevada. I just think the answer, and I've always said it on the show, is regional cooperation. I think that the more that the region sits down together and has conversations about how to move the region together, the more effective and with one voice they can use in the legislature to advocate for ideas. Recently I was watching the CHAB board where, the regional jurisdictions get together and talk about homelessness. And, now they're sharing information, they're looking at policies that each area can implement to be able to move the issue forward. And so I think the more opportunities you have to sit down and talk about the issues as a region and move those forward together at the legislature and make the legislature really a partner, I think will be best for representation here in Northern Nevada.
Helen, I don't want to let this go because when the name popped up, I smiled because it's a name from my past and your past as well. Bob Weiss, under consideration. Would you just share with people a brief summary of who he is and what he brought to the table back in the day?
Well, he was minority leader in the assembly, and actually he was in the assembly my freshman year in 81. So when his name came up, I chuckled because I thought, oh my goodness, he wants to get back in. But it really is just for this special session and maybe one in December on a few other issues. But he would have been a great asset, and certainly Carson City wanted him so that they could make sure that all of Carson City was in the same district and had as much representation as possible once they redistrict. Now, I do want to tell you, I was flippant about my answer about Southern Nevada, but both of my parents come from rural Nevada. My father was from Goldfield in Esmeralda County and my mother in Lincoln County. So, even though people don't represent those areas, just one or two individuals, everyone in Nevada needs to care about our rural communities and help out where they can. I know with great representation that we've had out there, whether it was Dean Rhodes or Gogachia, they have been incredible in the amount of power that they have because they work closely across the aisle with everyone, and they work very hard to get special funding and programs for their districts. So even though their districts are very large, if they were very resolute and arch conservative and wouldn't work with Democrats, they'd get nothing. but they know that they have to work real hard to bring home some bacon to their areas.
Yes, and just on another note, it's been interesting to watch Catherine Cortez Masto go out into rural Nevada and take Jackie Rosen with her. And you speak to very conservative people out in rural Nevada, and they may not vote for her, but they give her props for working hard for rural Nevada. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about districts 1 and 3 as far as the congressional districts go right after this timeout.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
Hey, Dad? What are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this. Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it. Yes. Yes, they will.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue on with our All Pundits show, and it's a great lineup. Alex Goff is here, Helen Foley, and Jesse Wadhams. So Helen, let me start with you. As far as the movement we're seeing on these maps with District 1, Congressional District 1 and District 3, what does this mean for District 3? Is it going to be more than just a toss-up district now, but more lean Democratic?
Well, according to the maps that they're just put out, there was a 1.9% advantage for Democrats. And under the new proposal, there would be an 8.2% advantage. So yes, indeed, it would be much easier, never easy, but much easier than it has been for a Democrat to win. As you recall, we've had Democrats and Republicans. We had John Porter, we had Joe Heck. You know, we've flipped it back and forth almost every time or every other time. So Dina Titus's district in District 1 really had a very big advantage. It was 2-1 Democrats. And so with that district, they have moved her down farther into the South and have given part of her district to District 3, which is Susie Lee.
Okay, so what does this mean for April Becker's campaign?
Well, I think I would like to first reserve judgment until we see whether the maps actually pass, although I tend to expect they will because, well, the Democrats control the process. They're their maps, and the governor is not likely to veto them. But I think obviously this does, it does create a pretty big uphill climb for any challenger. They've essentially taken what was, what as Helen rightly says, was originally designed to be a very swingy congressional district, and I think made it far more safe for the Democrats to generally hold as a sort of a reliably blue district. So I think while it's not quite the level of the challengers that go against somebody in District 1 that go against Dina Titus and usually just are sacrificial lambs, it's very much more going to be an uphill battle than I think April Becker was looking at.
Okay, CD4. Your thoughts on?
Well, I could talk about CD3 or CD4. I mean, I think, Helen, the numbers she may have quoted were from the 2020 presidential election. And what we saw is, and we see it throughout communities here in Nevada, which was that Trump underperformed down ballot candidates. And so if you look at the 2020 presidential election and you hold that to being a Democratic performance measure, it may not be completely accurate. And so someone like April Becker may be able to outperform that margin. And so what I would offer is that those districts may be even a little bit more competitive than what we understand right now, which I think ultimately is hopefully better for the process. You know, it'll probably still be a base turnout game, but what we've seen from Susie Lee has tried to, by working with the Problem Solvers Caucus like her predecessor, Jackie Rosen, has tried to put herself in the middle of, where politics is today. And I think that for candidates running on the Republican side, it would be better for overall if they would try to attack toward that as well. But we saw in Virginia was a 10-point Biden state. And then we recently saw the Republican governor win that state. And so I would say that if we're looking at 2020 metrics, especially in the presidential, it may not be indicative of performance moving forward.
Okay, and just want to point out that Mark Amodei is also a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus.
He is, and he's someone who isn't, I would offer that he's ran as more of a moderate than more of a arch conservative is the word that Helen used.
And yet he also ran the Trump campaign. So, right here in Nevada. Okay, let's take a break. We got to balance this thing out. We'll be right back.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and Twitter. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States. I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and YouTube. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're going with an all-pundit show today with a great lineup. Jesse Wadhams is here, Alex Goff, and Helen Foley. Jesse, I've got to ask you about the fact that it looks like the Secretary of State is going to force the mining petitions onto the ballot. Your thoughts on this, as mining has already cut a deal, and you represent mining companies, what are their thoughts about these other taxes coming back, sales tax and gaming tax?
Yeah, technically speaking, it would be the gaming tax and sales tax initiatives that would go on. And so I think the interest, for mining, I would generally say that they cut the deal and they've increased their tax load by 100%, and so that go all dedicated now to education. So I think they feel fairly comfortable where they sit. I think with the gaming and sales tax, the Secretary of State sets up an interesting question, because the Constitution is relatively clear on this point. It says it shall, once it's been presented to the legislature and the legislature does its thing, then it's presented to the voters. And we have never had to test, well, can the legislature modify that a little bit to say, okay, this is process, this is ministerial, and we can pull this back. I think this could, depending on how the court rules, and we're going to have to get a decision on what that means, the interplay of that statute versus the Constitution. If those go on the ballot, I think there is an interesting dynamic that could shape up, that in an off-cycle race, those things tend to drive turnout in more conservative, more Republican ways. So it could have a very big dynamic shift to the whole race.
Helen, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Jesse. You know, if something has passed 2 sessions of the legislature and it's supposed to go on the ballot, and that's what the Constitution says, I was really kind of scratching my head when that big deal came out during the last session. I thought, how are they going to remove that from the ballot? And obviously, Barbara Sagaski said they can't.
Alex, you get the last word on this topic.
Oh goodness, and it'll be a poor word. It's an interesting. I'm interested to read the opinions when they come out. Now that I'm going to law school myself, not getting my JD but my master's, I'm interested in reading the opinions and learning more about the Constitution myself. These are very interesting questions that are posed.
But if they were to go on the ballot, and they would likely pass, Jesse, that would mean a huge amount of money.
It certainly could be, and I think, if I were a gaming company particularly, I think the sales tax, it hits people's pocketbooks, so you kind of struggle to think that voters are going to say sales tax. But gaming, I just was listening on the radio this morning, American casinos across the board are going to have the biggest year they've ever had, and that's going to be a fascinating campaign to watch if it sits on the ballot.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you all so much. Great show. Really appreciate it. And for you guys who are going to be in Carson City, good luck this week. And we'll be right back. Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hey, Dad? Are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this. Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it. Yes. Yes, they will.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Watch Nevada Newsmakers on YouTube. You can do that now these days. We'll see you on the next broadcast.